Welcome on this sunny morning to Vienna. We are here right in the city center in front of the opera. And I would like to welcome you to our first panel session of today with the focus Life Sciences here in Austria. I would like to first present here our participants here in the panel. We go through the list in alphabetical order and based on the last name. So Gabriele Gradnitzer is a partner and head of the Life Science Practice Group Austria within Stanton, a leading global executive firm. And she is today here as an expert regarding the question of finding qualified personnel, one of the key questions today in location decisions. Then we have Elvira Kainerdorfer. She's responsible for Life Sciences Austria, short LISA, the program at AWS, the Austrian funding bank, which includes also pre-seed and seed financing. She has a background in technical chemistry and worked in several big medical device companies before joining AWS 15 years ago. Then we have Peter Llewellyn-Davies, sorry. He's the president of Biotech Austria, the Biotech Association here in Austria, as well as CEO of Apeiron, a huge R&D focused biotech company. He has more than 25 years of professional experience as a board member of companies like Medigene, Shield Therapeutics, Vilex, Immunocore, and Catharex. Last but not least, we have Philipp, associate professor at the Medical University of Vienna. He studied at the Medical University of Graz and worked then as a postdoc at Harvard Medical School. Since 2014, he's an associate professor at the Medical University of Vienna and also director for the program for T-cell lymphoma. He's an expert for hematological malignancies, and functional precision medicine. What we would like now to discuss together with you, and there I would also like to invite all the people in the screens joining to put their questions in Slido, then we can really have a panel discussion here. As a first round of questions, I would like to touch on the topic generally life sciences here in Austria. Elvira, just recently you published the latest life sciences report and giving all the new numbers regarding the sector here in Austria. There are about nearly 1,000 companies active in Austria in the fields of biotechnology, pharma, and medical devices, which means a plus of 7% compared to 2017. And their revenues grew even more by 12%, so it's really impressive numbers. And today, more than 60,000 people work here in this sector in Austria, which probably you won't tell, given that Austria is quite a small country. So apart from these sheer numbers, where do you see the most important developments for the sector since 2017? Which subsectors are of particular importance here in Austria?
So we see the sector is very diverse, and of course there are some important areas that are really boosting very much. So of course, on the one hand, it's digital health. It comes from AI drug development. It comes to personalized medicine. I think that Professor Staber will also talk about it later on. And of course, we have imaging analysis. We have the artificial intelligence, which searches for biomarkers for predicting for every single patient what is his risk for getting disease later on. And in the cancer sector, we have a lot of interesting developments, and also, for example, developments in drug platforms for drug development, like organoids, for example.
Thank you. Peter, you're representing a privately held European biotech company based here in Vienna. And from your point of view, where do you see the main strengths of Austria, also from an international perspective?
Well, as quite rightly said, exciting developments, not just in the whole life science field, but specifically in the biotechnology field. Look at what's happening. BioNTech, which was a biotech company, has now expanded to a multi-billion-dollar public company, which is the world leader in vaccines. So, you know, in Austria, we have many talents. We have so much knowledge, not just scientific knowledge, but also entrepreneurial knowledge. That's why we founded Biotech Austria, to promote this, to support the biotech companies, which are usually the smaller ones, the innovative companies who indeed need more support. And we feel that this group of companies need in future much more attention. And well, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk about it.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming here and joining. So, Gabriele, we know that availability of qualified personnel is a key success factor for location decisions of international companies, gaining even more and more importance. As an expert regarding qualified personnel, where do you see the strengths of Austria?
I think the reasons why companies decide to start up their business here in Austria are different, but I want to highlight three main big issues. First of all, the financials. Yeah, companies decide to start up their business here because if you look to all those international compensation benefit surveys, you see the average salaries of people and of personnel in R&D especially is lower than in comparable countries, compared to Germany, to Switzerland, to Benelux countries, and much different other countries here in Europe. So also the tax situation is different. When you look to the whole packages companies have to offer to their employees, they usually don't have to pay for social insurance private wise. They don't have to pay for health insurance, for pension plans, for schooling packages and so on, like in other countries. So that brings a big advantage, and also a very nice quality and price ratio. You get very good schooling, public schooling here in Austria. You have a very secure healthcare system here in Austria, as we have seen in the pandemic situation as well. So that's one big point where companies decide to open up business here. The second one is that we have a very high educational surrounding. We have 7 universities with focus on human medicine. We have lots of universities in natural sciences. We also have even chemical high schools who bring graduates with 19 years to the bench directly, to the laboratories, to the R&D places. So that's quite interesting. And the third point maybe which motivates companies is that we have a very nice ecosystem here. You talked about that already. R&D people, scientists, they like to work in their scientific community and network with others. When you look to Vienna Biocenter, you have 50 different nationalities working in one place, partying in the evening, going out, making friends here. That's the community where researchers come to Austria and then they decide to stay because they like the surrounding here in Austria, in all those small hubs we have here.
Okay, thank you very much. So the quality of life and the social securities helps in attracting also international talent to Austria. Okay, thank you. So Philipp, before joining the medical university here in Vienna, you were at the Harvard Business Medical School. From a medical scientific position, where do you see major differences between Austria and the US?
Well, there are many differences, of course, but if I have to pick a few, I would say that especially, you know, I'm an expert for blood cancers and hematologist, and especially the field of blood cancer is highly researched in the Harvard Medical Campus, and they're really high-profile groups, and they're very, very skilled in developing good mechanistic models, and there's a high competition. It's a very fruitful environment also for discussion and so on. So it's a great campus, of course, at Harvard Medical School. But a major difference to here is, and here we have a few very, very high-skilled groups, but is the chance for translation, because there's a structure that we find here at the medical campus that we have access to primary patient material. And this in a very structured, very global way with a huge sample sets, especially in institutes as the Pathology Institute, for instance, or also in translational institutes like laboratory medicine, but also the clinical institutes that have large sample collections that are the major player or the major source for translation of mechanistic information, of basic information into the clinics. And these are actually the key parts if you want to move forward for clinical application, that you find somebody and that you find a structure to translate it. And this is something that is kind of missing in these high profile institutes like Harvard, but that is actually part of the soul of the institutes that you find here in Vienna.
Okay, thank you. Very interesting. I would like now to move on a topic, and it's also one of the mottos of our virtual open day here, Austria, where innovation moves mountains. So we already heard that R&D is really one of the core competencies here in Austria. We have an R&D quota of 3.23%, which puts us on the second place within the EU, just behind Sweden. So I would also like to stress that. And we also know that international companies are really important and a key to the R&D location Austria. So international companies are about just 3.4% of the companies here, but they employ more than 50% of the personnel working in R&D. So Peter, about 3 weeks ago, I read in the news that Apeiron, together with the Medical University Vienna, has started a new study to test a COVID-19 medicine, which can be inhaled. Apeiron itself is really R&D focused. And since June 2020, you have been able to obtain 40 million euros in investment and funding. So how has the Austrian R&D funding system supported you in developing the company to where you are today?
I must admit, the support of the AWS, the FFG, the WAW, I think it's in English, Vienna Agentur, they supported us tremendously in the process of gaining funding. In particularly for startups, though, if I may point these out, younger companies who are looking to start their business, the infrastructure here, the funding infrastructure is excellent. However, without being critical, there is a certain point in a biotech's life, which is when we start clinical trials. And the clinical trials need funding. We're not talking about a few 100,000 or a couple of million, we're talking about multi-millions. And this is where we need more interest from investors. So therefore, let's say my appeal to investors is to start investing in companies who also do clinical development. My request to the FFG to also support the development of clinical trials and not just preclinical work. So we have some work to do, but for basic stuff, it's excellent here. And I must admit, it's one of the most advanced countries in the world with the support, the Investitionsprämie, which is a support for getting additional funding for companies, is very good indeed. Just to give you some example of why it has worked, just 3 companies in the last 12 months have been sold to, let's say, just this week, it was announced that Phagomed was sold to BioNTech. A couple of months ago, Allcyte was sold to Excentia, a British company. And approximately a year ago, Timus was sold to Merck. So there is excellent science, fantastic technology, and these companies stay in Vienna. That's the best thing about it. They're not moved anywhere else. So one of our goals as well is to make sure that investors come here, buy or invest in companies, but that the know-how, the acumen, the people stay here in Vienna, because the infrastructure is so great. And as you said, everything is appealing for people to work here.
And of course, our objective is also then not even that they stay here, not only that they stay here, but also that they grow here and they enhance their R&D activities even more now when they are sold to international companies.
And this example, which I mentioned about Allcyte, they're investing in a brand new production site. So the Brits are investing in Austria, even though Brexit or whatever, but they're actually investing in a new production site with multi-million investments in Austria because of the support obtained through various agencies, but also the interesting place to work. So things are moving very well. It's a booming business, and the businesses, our 50 or 60 members we have now, are all very interested in dynamic and all wishing to move forward and getting our industry more focused in the minds of investors and also governmental agencies.
Philipp, the university clinic here in Vienna, AKH, is the 4th largest hospital in the world, the 2nd largest in Europe. So what are the strengths of the clinic? And as a second part of my question, how is the Austrian sanitary system supporting innovation?
It is not just a very large hospital, it's actually very well equipped. So it's a high technical standard, and the people here are very high qualified as well. And if I have to pick a few things, but one thing is the interdisciplinarity of this. So you have a highly qualified specialty, also highly specialized, and actually through patient care coming together in board meetings, you interact directly with these specialists. And so together with the samples that I already mentioned, so this really generates a good way of translating knowledge and to translate the disciplines with each other, and also to come up with new research questions or new developmental questions actually that can be applied quite easily. And if you know, as a clinician, we all want to get something into the clinics to the patient. We want to directly help somebody who is in need, and the Austrian law and also the sanitary system, so as you already mentioned, is very supportive in a way that you can get as an individual healing attempt. If you find a specific evidence for a patient in need who has exceeded, for instance, standard care opportunities, you can actually apply for, and this is quite easy, apply for an individual healing attempt for this particular patient. That's why you can actually try new approaches with patients and in a direct setting. And this is very, very helpful. This only works in a very high profile field, and also in the kind of companies and a sanitary system that is the secure, the insurances that are after a certain while are paying for the treatment if it's working. Yeah. So we have a kind of an arrangement with companies, for instance, when it comes for treating patients with in a new indication, a new disease indication, that if we can prove a benefit for a patient for 2 months, so from month 3 on, for the benefit of the patient. This is a very innovative system actually, because this really brings new development in action into the clinic.
Let's say the size of our company, of our country, may be an advantage in the sense that it makes it easier to discuss directly with, on the one hand side, companies, but also the social security system, the insurance companies.
Could be. The one thing is that the ways are shorter. Yes, that's true. But there are also maybe fewer proponents, fewer key players who are actually involved. So you don't need to have 2 large panels. So that's why it's also maybe easier. So the size sometimes, we have the critical mass, but it's not oversized. I think this could be an advantage as well.
Elvira, so AWS has a pre-seed and seed program for high-tech startups. Can you shortly describe the main points of these programs, and what other funding programs make Austria particularly attractive?
For the pre-seed funding, it's for a very early phase when you have just another idea, a little bit more, perhaps a first prototype or first data when it comes to drug development. And here we can support with 200,000 euros to develop your idea further, to get first data, to get a first prototype. This is a pre-formation phase where the company must not be founded yet. Later on, for the seed financing, you can get up to 800,000 euros for your project. And this is really to develop the company further, and it's for companies that are already founded. The 2 fundings are independent, so you can straight go for seed financing, for example, if it's a company from Germany coming to Austria, so they don't have to go through the whole process. And we have a very strong selection process, as the budgets are not so high. So we make a very thorough due diligence for the project, but of course we offer in advance that you can come to us. We have consulting more or less, just to make a first check of your project, if it's eligible or not. So you don't have to do all the application process, and then we have to tell you, sorry, it doesn't fit into this criteria. Additionally to our fundings, of course, there is the funding from the FFG available. They are addressing really the R&D activities in a company. It's the costs for personnel, for R&D, and for material, for example, that is paid by FFG. We as AWS, we have a broader approach, and we at least can take all the costs that are related with the company creation and growth of the company. And in the federal areas of Austria, of course, there are also other fundings available. For example, in Vienna, there's a very attractive funding available from the Vienna Business Agency, and they are very helpful also. And most of the fundings can be combined, so we can have an attractive package for companies that would like to have their business started in Austria.
Okay, thank you, Elvira, and of course, ABA will be happy to assist you in finding the right subsidy for your possible project here in Austria. And I would also like to point out the research premium of 14%, which is really a fiscal premium, and which is also quite unique. And you will be really paid out in cash by the tax authority for your specific R&D project here in Austria. Gabi, very often Austria is compared to Germany in location decisions. We also see that, let's say, one of the main competitive countries at the moment regarding location is Germany. If you have a look on R&D personnel, where do you see the difference between Austria and Germany?
First of all, as already mentioned, it's the salary, the costs for personnel. But also, if you have a look to the Austrian labor law, Austrian labor law is not so complex and difficult like the German one. Yeah. So here you're much more flexible. You can, let's say, in the worst case, easily lay off candidates or personnel as well. So that's you have short notice periods. The whole costs, social insurance costs are lower. So that's a big advantage. And as we already talked about that figure, 70,000 people are working in that sector, and many of them in R&D related roles. We have big centers also from big pharma like Octapharma, Boehringer Ingelheim. We have Novartis with 4,000 people here. We have Takeda with a couple of thousand people here. So these big brands, they of course attract that R&D community, and it's much more concentrated here in Vienna, in Linz, in one other hub in Graz, and maybe a little bit in Tyrol, where it makes it easier for R&D people to stay together than maybe in the big German market. Yeah. Also.
Okay, for another round of questions, I would like to come to the topic of personalized medicine, which is one of the hot topics now. And also the Austrian government has decided to invest heavily in this sector. There will be a new research center here in Vienna, and 75 million euros will be invested there at the medical university. And Philipp, you're one of the experts here in Austria regarding this topic, and you just recently published a scientific paper about a functional approach in personalized medicine, which was developed here in Vienna. And where do you see opportunities for international companies to participate in these developments? And maybe you can also point out a bit the, let's say, the specialties of your approach to personalized medicine.
All right, thank you. So yeah, thanks also for mentioning. So we really had just recently won a very high profile paper actually in cancer discovery. And so the standing of our environment in the precision medicine field is actually internationally quite high. So we are not just recognized, we are also active players, and we also founded the International Personalized Medicine Group for blood cancers. And this is actually a quite so important standing also for international, from an international perspective. And for companies, Peter just mentioned in his first statement actually that the company Allside was funded here in Austria. Actually, Allside was funded actually in a close collaboration of the Center of Molecular Medicine and my group here at the Medical University Vienna. So actually this was a direct application of a diagnostic development that was developed in the laboratory of Giulio Soberti-Furger, who is the director of the Center of Molecular Medicine. And actually the application, the design of how to bring it into the clinic and to patients from our institute, and actually also the access to samples and to patients from our side, and to really design it also as a trial. This was actually this interaction, these highly profiled people involved. This really is a force of a success. And I think you see that there's a lot of companies that could, spin around it. Allside is an important company, an AI company, Excentia, just invested it heavily into this company. They bought it, and actually they further developing it. But also, there are a lot of bystander developmental possibilities that are supporting this most important movement in medicine or in life science that is actually foreseeable in the next 10 years.
Okay, and where do you see opportunities for international companies? I know you're a translational scientist there, but of course this heavy investment in the R&D center may also give some opportunities for international companies interested in coming to Austria. So where do you see the opportunities there?
There are really many, so it's many that I might not think of even, but of course our most pressing points are we are generating a lot of data, very essential data, actually very important data that are quite because they are about the clinical follow-up of the many omics data that you, when you make NGS or proteomics or metabolomics or what, you generate a lot of data, but you don't know necessarily what happens actually to the patient. But we are actually fully annotating our samples, and we do know what happens to those patients, which treatments they receive, for instance, and to integrate all this data is actually an Eldorado for data scientists, and actually the whole environment here, I think, is very, very fruitful for data scientific companies because the data set is unique.
Okay, thank you. Peter, where do you see advantages for an international company in the field of personalized medicine? And what can be the first steps to get in contact with the ecosystem here?
Well, thank you for addressing that, because Apeiron is focused on personalized medicine. And in fact, over 50% of the companies in Biotech Austria, our members, are focused on personalized medicine. It is the way to treat patients in the future. Quite simply, how do we use the patient's own immune system to kill off all the diseases we have? Cancer, one of the biggest things, is mostly treated by personalized medicine, and it will get even more focused. Instead of chemotherapy, which just kills off everything, we would have very specific tumor activating, let's say not tumor activating, immune system activating tumor killers. That's our goal. So for international investors, and I'm very happy to hear that money is being spent on creating the basis for personalized medicine in the research area. But we also need money for the next steps, okay? Research, fantastic. Medical universities, as I said, is an excellent way, but we don't have to go to the UK like Sciencia is to get money into this country. We need to get the government to understand that they also have to invest in the next step. So this is I really support this, and I think we would like more investors in this country. We would like those who are watching and say, we would like to invest in Austria. Please come to Austria. We have the science as demonstrated. We have the people. We have the infrastructure. We have loads of labs. We have loads of offices. We have loads of people. And now to develop our projects into the next step, we also need your help to get these projects moving forward. And it's not a desperation plea, because it is just the case that we find enough investors in the US, in the UK, who are interested, and they're looking at Austria now, not just Germany to get to this point. They're actually looking at Austria, and they're realizing that our location is buzzing. It's moving in the right direction. And the industry, people are looking at biotech and saying, I would love to work in biotech. And you can see it from as you said, from the recruitment. It is very easy to get people because of the labor laws. It is very easy to get people. The tax rates are pretty high, so that's something we have to work on. But again, you have the advantages of a great system, a safe place to work. You have the education system, the health system. That's different to Germany, better. But on the other hand, the taxes could be a little bit lower to attract also those people who earn a little bit more money to our country. So, but otherwise, I agree, personalized medicine is the future. We have immuno-oncology drugs in development. We're investing a lot of money in getting these drugs on the market, but also we work with MUW on this. We work with the other hospitals in Austria, but also other hospitals abroad to get this moving forward.
And in your second role as president of Biotech Austria, so what can be first steps for a company to get in contact with the ecosystem?
Well, first of all, of course, ABA, AWS, FFT, LISA Vienna is an excellent approach for getting funding. But of course, Biotech Austria is there to support this process. And the reason we founded this association is to make sure that we are aware, not just in Austria, but outside of Austria. We're a member of various international associations, the International Biotech Association and others as well. So people are saying, oh, Austria, we've never seen you before, right? You haven't been part of our infrastructure. They said, well, look, we've got hundreds of companies, thousands of companies here working on not just personalized medicine, but in general in life science. I said, we didn't know about this. So this is really our ambition to get our industry more focused outside of Austria, but also in the press for the general public. Most people don't know that it takes decades almost to get a drug from the idea in the university through to the entrepreneurship, onto the market, and then later into your pharmacy. They think I go there and buy a product. No, it's an enormous chain of events, and it starts in universities or institutes, moves to biotech, then it goes to pharma. Best example, the BioNTech drug, they developed it. Pfizer took over the distribution. Biotechs can't do that. They need the big pharma companies. So it's all working together in this infrastructure, and Austria is excellently placed for this.
Thank you. And I think we all work together here to make Austria more known internationally for being really an excellent life science hub, really here in Europe. Gabi, what are developments that should be considered regarding qualified staff in the near future? So what challenges have to be faced in the next years?
We globally already see that the war for talents in specific roles like AI, like digitalization, analytics, and so on, also in connection with healthcare and life sciences, the war for talent globally is already going on. So we are facing that trend. So I think the momentum here in Austria, especially in Vienna, with that big investment you talked about in the personalized medicine, is really great here. We have now the ecosystem, we talked about that, where we really can move on, where we can get new members on board, new investments, new companies which grow their business out of Austria. I'm with you. It's not only the startup phase, it's also the scaling up, the commercialization of the products, which should be kept in Austria, and all stakeholders here in that ecosystem, politicians, investors, banks, whatever. Also the IPO-driven company, I think that's important, that maybe why not going public here in Austria on the Austrian Stock Exchange. So all that should be taken into consideration to be the hub for personalized medicine in the future here in Europe. Maybe a little Harvard would be my vision for the future.
Could be a great vision. Elvira, where do you see the strength of the Austrian ecosystem? So really, let's say the whole system, companies, R&D, and also public institutions like ours. And what tips you see a lot of, let's say, startups, of course, coming to AWS. What tips would you give an international company and startup evaluating Austria as a possible location?
So we have already talked about it, but I think that Austria has a very good infrastructure. We have everything here in the whole value chain. We have everything from good universities, good trained people, good staff. Then we have a very good mixture of big companies, small companies, very innovative startups. And really a really high amount of biotech companies. I think it's 150. So it's really high amount of these companies. And then also a very good ecosystem regarding to funding. And as it's already mentioned, we have a very strong network. We all know each other. So when you come somewhere in the system, for example, if you come to Biotech Austria, they will tell you, please, we can tell you this, and then we have the other people, and I can tell you the names and then the email address and the telephone number. So we have everything here, and we work together very strong. So I think it's very easy to come into the system.
Great, thank you.
Can I just add one little thing to your comment? Sorry. Just as an example, if you have an expert who's looking for a new job, and he would normally go to Boston, that area, he would go to Oxford or Cambridge in the UK. Those are the sort of the big biotech hubs, let's say, in the world. But then they look at the house prices, then they look at the possibility of schooling, as you mentioned, then they look at the infrastructure, and then they look at Vienna, and they think, my God, I should move to Vienna. So the next question is, what about the language, right? And we haven't mentioned this so far, but you know, the infrastructure is set up in such a way that we mostly speak English anyway. So it's not so much of thinking, oh, I can't speak German, I can't go to Vienna. No, this country is English speaking. It's a central hub of Central Europe. And we have, because of the experience with Eastern Europe as well, and Western Europe, and the whole thing comes together here. And this is one of the amazing talent we have here isn't just from the UK or the US, it also comes from the whole center of Europe, and it comes here and we all speak one common language. Happily, it's English, that helps me. But of course, it's an excellent thing for future, to encourage future staff to come here.
Thank you, Peter. This was an excellent roundup, I would say, of this discussion panel. I'm just looking, do we have any questions from the public? Okay, thank you. So there's one question, is there any help to find talent in Austria? Well, maybe I can answer this question because I think I would like to stress our new department at ABA. Since about 1.5 years, we have got a second department work in Austria, where we will also assist Austrian companies in finding qualified personnel abroad, and also help, let's say, foreign qualified personnel coming to Austria. And for example, I have colleagues that assist in the whole process of applying for the Red, White, Red card, which is the work and residence permit here in Austria. So our sister department will be happy to assist in these questions. And after our session, there will be the possibility to have one-to-one meetings, which can be booked via the B2Match platform. Please make use of this possibility. And of course, all the minutes, the presentations, and all the video will be available after this session. So if there are not any questions anymore, I would like to close the panel. I would like to thank all of you for this fruitful discussion. And of course, I would say hello and welcome you, all of you here in Vienna in a close future. Thank you.